Folks, why did the dwarf walk into the forest? Well, obviously to settle a grudge. Were y'all expecting some kind of good joke there? You guys know I don't do that. Anyway, yeah, they're here to settle a grudge. Against, what? The Wood Elves, right? Because this looks like the Forest of Athel Loren? Well, no. There's a giant Chaos Ever Chicken over there, so maybe that's a whole new grudge. You came into the forest to settle the grudge with the pointy ears, and then you find the Ever Chicken here. Boy, now you really got grudges going on. So welcome back to Total War Warhammer 2, where we're going to see the dwarves taking on Chaos, and yes, in an odd setting, the Forest of Athel Loren. So if we take a look for the dwarves, there's going to be two dwarf warriors up front. There's a Longbeard on each flank. These guys are immune to psychology, very good leadership. They're not going to do a ton of killing against anything with armor, but they will stand their ground for a long time. We've got two Iron Drakes with Troll Hammer, torpedoes, so some deadly anti-large potential here, and then more with the Bolt Thrower. Technically more here too with the Thunderers, and then we've got a couple of dwarf warriors in the back, and they are supported by some Longbeards with great weapons. Pretty decent flank units, as they can do some armor-piercing damage to anything trying to come along the flank, and again, they have quite good leadership. We've got one more Longbeard right here in the center, and Belagar Ironhammer is there. He does have his special ability, which gives expert charge defense and melee defense for 25 seconds to a 40-meter radius, and then there are two Runesmiths. This one has Wrath and Ruin and Ruin of Negation, and then same on the other. If we take a look at the Chaos Army, of course there's chariots. You always got to have chariots against the dwarves, right? Now, up front, we're going to have a line of Chaos Warriors with great weapons. There's going to be some significant anti-large capability. And then Sartharel, I would expect that he's going to be coming with Plague of Rust. Let's confirm that. And he's got Transmutation, which takes away melee attack, and sure enough, Plague of Rust. There's going to be a few Chaos Marauders to provide extra fodder. It looks like there's 4 of them, and then we've got the Mirror Guard here, an interesting pick against the dwarves. They do provide a... did they provide? No, they don't provide Guardian. Or I thought they did provide Guardian. They may not show up here. I don't know. I thought they provided Guardian, but maybe they don't. We've got, again, the Chaos Chariot over here. The Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is an interesting pick against the dwarves, but I do think they have some natural missile resistance, and perhaps that's why he's been picked. There are 2 Marauder Horsemasters in the back. These guys are going to have a little bit better melee capability. 1 more Horsemaster and 1 Marauder Horseman. Let's look at this guy for the missile resistance. Yeah, it's 25%, and that may be the reasoning for the pick. Anyway, let's hit play, because typically, obviously, you're going to want them for anti-large duties. That looks like a giant flame storm back there. Let's see how the dwarves react. Now, with the dwarves, anytime you're going to be trying to use things like these Iron Drakes, you got to have a plan for how to protect them. You want layers and layers. And the Runesmiths can slow down units coming after them, but the challenge is when you start getting multiple units coming in from multiple vectors. And then Sartharel is pretty vulnerable to some of the stuff here. He has a lot of missile resistance, but I don't think that's probably going to apply to the Trollhammer torpedoes. So Sartharel will resist a significant number of missiles. The Chaos front line is not going to have a problem chewing through the dwarves. It's only a matter of time. All the dwarves can do is try and slow things down. See those Horsemasters moving in? The dwarves are going to keep their static formation and try and hold their ground, but those Iron Drakes are going to have to get in and do damage on key targets, and they're going to have to do it quickly if they're going to want to be successful here. Right now, they're just firing at some Chaos Marauders. It's not going to be a good trade there. The Everwatcher is taking damage from these guns, but it's not going to take the damage super quick. And then look at this, the Bolt Thrower being attacked by the Marauder Horsemasters and the Horsemen. So we've got the Mirror Guard coming in from the flank too. So the dwarves, yep, see they're already cracked here. This is the trouble when you bring these Iron Drakes, and it's the Marauder Horseman that comes in, which is fortunate for the dwarves because that Horsemaster is a lot more capable from a melee standpoint. You see Sartharel here, some of his troops falling back, but those were just standard Marauders. I wouldn't expect a whole lot from them. These Chaos Warriors are going to be very difficult. You can see here the harassment on the back line, persistent and constant. That's what Chaos needs. You got to keep these units pinned down. Chariots are particularly difficult to stop, and then we got a Horsemaster here coming in on the Bolt Thrower, which is now quite susceptible. And yeah, it's just going to get ugly back here. It's hard to stop these units, and the Troll Hammers are getting mobbed, basically. This is always your concern with the Troll Hammers, is they're very expensive. Can you protect them? And at this point, it looks like no. So the Troll Hammers are now pinned in. Very nice play by Chaos to get these completely pinned down where they can't do their work. And the Ever Chicken just breaks through your lines. And with the Dwarves, combination of Chariots, Ever Chicken, and this Dragon Ogre means that it's going to be very hard to defend your skirmishers. You're going to have to really do well with some Wrath and Ruin and some very timely shots. You're going to have something to keep the Horse Masters at bay, too. At the same time, having to deal with 3 armor-piercing infantry in the form of the Chaos Warriors, which are going to be quite deadly. Quite deadly. The Longbeards with great weapons, if they don't get a nasty charge from the Warriors with great weapons, they'll do some damage back. But if they take a charge, they're not going to do great. Sartharel, you're just never going to get this guy to sit still. See, even though the kill isn't immediate back here, just all this stuff pinning down the Dwarf skirmishers. And this one actually getting a kill here. These horsemen, they're struggling, but they're trying to kill the Thunderers. And then Sartharel just kind of relentlessly pushing around the battlefield. He causes terror. It's a real pain in the butt. He's one nasty chicken. You can see there the Trollhammers were trying to get a shot, but by the time they do, Sartharel's all over them. So the Dwarf box is just completely sundered by the Chaos here. And at this point, the Dwarves are falling apart. They're not going to be able to hold their ground. Belagar's forces just not going to be able to hold their ground. So anytime you're picking as the Dwarves, think about the faction that your opponent has picked. And then think about the units in that faction that are the best at knocking their way through lines. And then chances are, that's the units that they're going to bring, because the Dwarves are extremely, extremely susceptible to that. You can bring Slayers, you can bring all kinds of stuff that's supposedly good at stopping large units, but Chariots will plow right through, Sartharel will plow right through, and with the Dwarves, Sartharel is particularly difficult to kill because of his missile resistance, and you just don't have a unit that has enough mass to pull him down. He is very annoying to deal with. So yeah, it's not very fun. He can't cause a ton of damage on his own, but he can certainly get in and interrupt other things. And so then that leaves you in that position of having to deal with all the different other tools that Chaos brought, dealing with 4 roving horsemen, and then having to keep your eye on a Dragon Ogre, and then having to keep your eye on a Chariot. So you can see the strategy there by Chaos worked, and the strategy is have too many targets for the Dwarves to choose wisely. And by the time I'm able to get a few attacks in, my superior infantry will be unstoppable, and that's exactly what happened here. The Dwarf player would have had to have focused on the large units, and then the infantry just cuts its way through the inferior Dwarf infantry. Dwarf infantry is only superior in some respects, right? I think originally when the game came out, a lot of people thought of the Dwarves like just, oh, well, they have the best infantry. Well, they don't. Their infantry causes very little damage in almost every scenario. Very little damage. It's their leadership, their armor, and their shields that make the Dwarves stubborn, and what can make them seem tough. But they don't necessarily do much damage. It's usually that they'll just outlast you. So that's always going to be your challenge with the Dwarves. How do I not get outlasted? And in this case, if you take out the skirmishers, it's over, because these Chaos Warriors are just going to hack their way through every Dwarf on the battlefield. So do whatever you got to do to get rid of the 2 Thunderers and the Iron Drakes. So these 5 units right here are the Dwarves' only prayer in this battle. So if they're out, it's over. Game over. Forget it. So yeah, it's hard for Dwarves to counter. Very difficult for Dwarves to, not impossible, but it's difficult for them to counter those good armor-piercing units from other factions. And the reason being is because, I mean, just Longbeards with great weapons are crappy. They're pretty cheap, but they're crappy. Just not very good. You can use Wrath, well, you used to be able to use Wrath and Ruin to equalize that fight, but Wrath and Ruin has been significantly nerfed over time too. So even that makes things a little trickier. Wrath and Ruin is also good because of being able to control the speed of certain units. And that's really your challenge as the Dwarves, is how do you control those units that can break through your lines? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You want to combine Wrath and Ruin with a heavy missile volley on key targets and be focused. Use depth of line to protect those units, and don't overspend on those units, because if you do, it just makes it that much easier for your opponent to disrupt them and to be there. You need all your units in more places at once, and then it makes that chaos strategy you just saw harder. So instead of investing a whole bunch of money into just a couple of Iron Drakes, invest that money, spread it out, make it more difficult for chaos to be able to get to all those different units. Still would be challenging, but that's what you got to deal with. That's dwarves for you. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this one. I hadn't seen the Ever Chicken in a while and wanted to see him going up against the dwarves. If you enjoyed the video, make sure and get up there and hit that like button, and then hit the subscribe and bell if you want to see more. I can't wait to have you all back for more. I love making this content for you. I do hope you're enjoying it. HeirofCarthage, signing out for now, folks.